preparation for our talk today, I looked up your YouTube account, and you have so many videos or just things available for people to see of this kind of unified Buddhist Sangha of Minnesota network that you have. That kind of like whether you release group statements or you are all discussing a topic. It's a really cool resource, and it's cool to see all of these faces of all these different traditions and different schools of Buddhism all together talking. And I was just curious um, what it's been like to plug into such looks like a robust Buddhist community in Minnesota.
Yeah, when I came to Buddhism, I just was like not doing well emotionally and behaviorally and mental health wise. And so I was just looking for help. And so, for a long time, my practice was just, being in the particular community where I trained and where I still teach, Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. But at some point, I had stability in my life and really the ability to reach out more. And so, first I just started going to other Soto Zen centers. And then I started to have a real interest in building broader networks. So I helped found something called the Minnesota Multifaith Network, and I've just made little efforts to bring people together to be a part. If people are bringing people together, I'll contribute my energies to be a part of that. Because yeah, there's something about the importance of a healthy uh, fabric of relationships across difference for collective liberation, which is my interest.
Yeah, yeah. And you have an engagement with multi-faith, so things that are not just specifically Buddhist. And I was just curious how that has been for you. I mean, like, are you someone that grew up studying world religions and all kinds of different things, or has this kind of engagement been educational for you or informative for you in other ways, as kind of weaving these communities together has been recently?
Yeah, well, I learn a lot by finding ways to be with people who are different in worldview, religious view, cultural background, national origin. So I learn a lot all the time. It's humbling and inspiring and sometimes very challenging. Um, you know, I grew up I grew up in a family that had an interest in multiculturalism and stuff. But there's no bottom to how how much one can learn and how much one can open and deepen. So, I mean, I've had an interest in this sort of thing for a long time and had some engagement with it through a lot of my life, but it's more and more, I would say, and definitely still learning.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you can be committed to one specific school, being Soto Zen, and yet have this openness to learn and to engage and to challenge yourself, because it's not always easy to be uh, maybe out of your comfort zone culturally or even just philosophically. And I was curious, is there one faith tradition or spirit tradition that is not Buddhist that you've actually been kind of gleaning some insight from in particular, or is it mostly something that you are still kind of exploring?
Yeah, I would say there's not really one that is predominant. Like I put a lot of effort into understanding Buddhism and just Soto Zen because, I think that if I'm going to say I'm a Soto Zen teacher, this is a very deep tradition where the roots in the United States are not that old, like 100 years was the first Soto Zen mission was established here. And so it's like there's a major challenging of energy for me in relating to Soto Zen practitioners in Japan and in the US and in understanding the tradition through literature, studying texts and stuff. So that's like a major emphasis. And then as I look kind of outside that tradition, there isn't really one that predominates. So I wouldn't say I'm more find Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or indigenous animistic traditions. I probably find indigenous animistic traditions more compelling, but it's all, I'm just trying to understand what motivates people I mostly understand what motivates people, so I can relate to them in a way where we can kind of get free together. Uh, yeah, so something like that.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that the main through line or the main kind of reason for the engagement in the first place is for this kind of collective liberation, and that's the underlying interest. And I think it's wonderful that it's like, well, let's all get better together, and let's allow for all the different expressions of that road be what they are. And I was curious too, because I think what you were saying very much rings true, that there's a bottomlessness to a lot of different cultural backgrounds and traditions and nationalities and all of that, as far as like what you can know. And I do find that Soto Zen has a very rich history indeed. And I know that you've written pretty extensively on Indian Buddhism. Like there's some things that you've written a couple books. There's like the Inside Vasubandhu's Yogacara. You've also done Vasubandhu's Three Natures. And I was just curious, like what has your engagement with more iconic or very like classic or ancient masters' works and studying them and then getting the chance to write about them? What has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, well, it's been largely inspiring and liberating. Sometimes, kind of brain hurting and frustrating. But yeah, I've been very interested in bringing forth. I've written two books on Vasubandhu. Vasubandhu is in our Zen lineage, so I have an interest in elevating people's knowledge, in particular in Soto Zen, but throughout Buddhist cultures, in these ancient teachers who had a lot of influence but are hard to understand. So Vasubandhu and his teachings on Yogacara have this reputation for being like really dense and hard to get. And there's been a lot of misunderstanding about them in Western academic settings in the 20th century that's kind of getting cleared up now. So I have been attracted to those largely Yogacara, and my next book is called Inside the Flower Garland Sutra, and it's about a tradition called Huayan Buddhism. Huayan means flower garland. Also, kind of an Indian tradition that really influenced early Chinese Buddhisms and then Zen. So these traditions, really what brought me to them is Thich Nhat Hanh clearly draws on them as the basis for his philosophy of how engaged Buddhism can work. And so, I was kind of going, well, he's talking about this stuff, he's using their terms. I would like to go back to the source. My teacher also, very grateful for my teacher, Tim Burkett, who really wanted us to have a thorough grounding in that kind of you could say the evolution, but we could say the changing or development of Buddhist tradition. So I was reading this with him, and I found a lot of inspiration there. I was like, I think these particular teachings are very timely. They resonate deeply with a postmodern, I'll say postmodern, you could say modernist, but I'd say postmodern worldview, and ideas about how within diversity, there's all this possibility for people to get free together, which is really what Mahayana Buddhism is about. But Yogacara and the Hawaiian traditions really emphasize it. So for me personally, it's been, yeah, super inspiring. I mean, I read the teachings, I try and understand how they are practiced. I do the practices and they change my life. And then I get to be with other people and interact with them about that and see that changing their lives. And that's like wonderful. But they are, sometimes I read like really difficult academic books that are over my head because I'm trying to be knowledgeable about what I'm teaching. And that can be really hard.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many footnotes that can lead you down rabbit holes here and there, and
Oh,
there,
yeah.
yeah, you'll find yourself looking through the Princeton Dictionary of Buddhism or Buddhist terms, and then you'll find yourself kind of leapfrogging to other terms to understand the term you looked up in the first place. There's so much of that, but I
Yes.
think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing to make these things accessible, because and I do want to get into Inside the Grass Hut in just a minute, but I wanted to ask about your experience right now writing this book about Inside the Flower Garland Sutra, because I was just curious, like, as you're in the process of writing this, as you're kind of investigating it, what are some teachings or what are some elements of that sutra that you are uh, incorporating into practice, being reminded of in your practice, and are excited to kind of share in your book, but also just as you go about your teaching.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of the themes of the Flower Garland Sutra, the Hawaiian tradition, is our abundance and positivity. So, like the Flower Garland Sutra is just overwhelmingly beautiful, and there's just like thousands and thousands of individually named amazing people whose capacities are described in incredible length, and it drives people crazy. They're like, it's too long, it's repetitive. It never really repeats itself, but it is iterative. But the energy of it is extremely positive. And I extensively read from the earliest layer of Buddhist literature, the Pali Canon, which is, I would say, has, the reputation that Buddhism sort of has a negative or a tone is reasonable. Like samsara is really bad. You know what I mean? The senses are on fire and so forth. Flower Garland Sutra is the sensory world is amazing and beautiful, and every single thing you perceive is always the body of the Buddha. And so there's this kind of the literature and thinking in this way helps me to shift and just be joyful and feel abundance. Like I'm not trying to let go of things by seeing they're empty. I'm trying to just be like, why would I hold on to anything? The next thing's going to be totally awesome too. So that's just for someone who has a history of depression and addiction, it's a very powerful medicine that goes against and a person who's like looks around at the world and sees all the suffering from systems of racism and patriarchy and anti-Semitism and on and on. And to be able to just shift and be like, in this moment, it's possible to see abundance and beauty and joy. And then I'm going on and on, but so that's one main piece. And then kind of the other big theme is the particularity and variety of types of people and their capacities to engage in liberation. Like everyone always has the capacity to do something liberative, but it's totally different and totally conditioned. You know what I mean? Like people from my hometown who are like really anti-queer, they can't just leap suddenly to feeling comfortable with me as a bisexual person. It's not like magic. You know what I mean? I want to understand what are the conditions that bring them to their view. What is the actual way I can relate to this person where maybe we can get a little more free together? So that's like really inspiring and provides a lot of opportunities to kind of look around at different people and try and learn where they are.
Yeah, what you said earlier is really resonating with me. Where uh, I love this positivity that's associated with the sutra, but also too, there's this view that I try to do, right, where you walk around the world and the people that you're driving and someone lets you into their lane and you're like, oh, thank you, that was a bodhisattva helping you, right? And then someone cuts you off, right? That's also a bodhisattva that's testing you, or whatever it is. And I really do try to do that. I fail quite a bit if we want to put it into that binary. But at the same time, but what you're saying about all things being existent with regards to the sutra as part of the Buddha's body, it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Where I have within the human body, within my body, there's all these germs that are attacking other germs, and there are good germs, and there are germs that are beneficial to you or not. And there's this war going on. There's constantly all these things that are happening to make me me for right now. And it's there's no when I put like a good or bad on it, that's just me in my thinking mind doing that. But otherwise, it's just things are happening as they're happening.
Hmm.
And uh, so as I interact with the world and I deal with a problematic person or a customer or whatever it is, and then also a good one, it kind of allows for a little bit more space of just like, oh, this is just that body part of the Buddha that's kind of mean sometimes, or is a little hard to, this is the scratchy throat part of the Buddha. So I don't know, that could help. So thank you for your help with phrasing that. And yeah, I appreciate also this other entry point where you can kind of see things from different angles and just try to help understand the conditions that made for other people to be what they are. I will say that there's something interesting too going on where, if I'm not mistaken, there is a in the air, in the zeitgeist right now. There's an interest in this sutra right now. I think that Reverend Reb Anderson just did like a series of Dharma talks on this sutra at the beginning of the year that they're slowly kind of releasing videos out about. And I think I've seen it just kind of pop up elsewhere. So there's like a taste for this positivity. There's a taste for this sutra. So I'm so glad that you're going in depth, that you're having this transformations for yourself as you explore it, and then you're going to make things available and accessible to others. So I'm really grateful for your work with that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I think I in many ways have just been following Reb Anderson for a long time. You know, he was teaching Yogacara, and then I started writing some books about that and teaching it a lot. And I know he's been focusing on the flower girl and the Avatamsaka. So yeah, but it's a really beautiful. I mean, it really helps to enter it somehow with other people or with a teacher because it's quite a tome, but it's a very inspiring document. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I have it on my bookshelf, and it's like, sag. It's like a little bit like yeah, it's sagging down the boards. Uh yeah, no, I think I'm excited to dive into that. And then I was curious as well about the inside the grass hut, because I had a chance. I was going through some of your videos, and you do the Song of the Grass Roof Hermitage chant. And I don't know how often I've come across this poem, but when you deliver it in a chant form, it was just very moving. It was very powerful, and it was very it gives a lot of the power that's inherent within the words an extra charge, hearing it chanted like that and all that. So thank you for making that resource available. And I was curious about what your experience with that book has been like, and what it's been like now since it's been published.
yeah, that's funny. That's the first book that I had published, and you know, I had never really thought of being a writer of prose. I always thought prose writing sounded very tiresome. Really, you know, people are like, I get up every morning and write all morning, and I was like, ah, you know what I mean? I like to just sit and have a poem come into my mind, and then I refine it a little bit. You know, so I wasn't very attracted to it, but I just on a whim, I really liked this poem called "The Song of the Grassroots Hermitage," which is a kind of a classic Chinese teaching poem. And I was like, I just love this. And I was like, I just feel like writing about it. I was like, that's weird. I'm just sitting on my porch. I'm like, that's weird. So I just wrote about it. The next day I felt like writing about it. And then I was like, I don't know, maybe people would like this. And that really, it was just kind of a whim. And you know, I just connected with some people about it, and it was, you know, some people said, I think it's pretty good. I sent it to a publisher. So I feel it's almost in a way embarrassing because I know so many wonderful writers who write a lot, and you know, they've struggled to get published or whatever. And I just anyway. So the process was pretty fun for me because in a way I don't know what I'm doing. The way that writing works for me is I've been an avid reader my whole life. So I have read mountains of literature. So I love language. And so I don't know that much about grammar or what you're supposed to do or what a process is supposed to look like. I'm like, I take in the ideas and then I say something. So the process to me tends to be pretty flowing. And I mean, there are times when I'm frustrated or annoyed, and it's taken me a while to get used to the editing process because I had done some other creative work for years and was very worked alone for a long time. So then having someone be like, "You got to fix this," was like, "But I'm so smart. I can't. You must be wrong." So I've had a lot of room to grow in that regard, and that has been good. But yeah, overall, it's been just something I love to do. Something
Yeah. And it looked like it was kind of committed to memory. Is it something that you recall every once in a while, or like once a week, or is it something that you, while you were writing it, kind of had in your mind circulating throughout the day?
Oh yeah, I'm sure I had that memorized by the time I started writing that. So, you know, I started you know, we do services at our Zen Center where we chant texts. And so I did not like think I'm trying to memorize text, but I would chant the text a lot and then it would be memorized, which is pretty normal. But at some point, you just chanting, I chant a lot of texts. So I chant probably 15 minutes a day and I have many, many different things I chant. So I have a lot of texts memorized. Just it's because I just do it a lot. This is
Mhm.
repetition. Just like if you sang a song a bunch of times, you would remember it.
Yeah.
And I do really value this. I mean, this was central to how Buddhism was transmitted early on. One of the reasons I do this is to be in relationship to the oral tradition that Buddhism has largely been. So the vast majority of Buddhists, in my understanding, don't really read Buddhist texts. They might hear them orally transmitted. You might remember some pithy phrases that are really meaningful to you. And so I want to be a part of embodying that part of the tradition by memorizing and orally transmitting texts.
Yeah.
And I encourage other people to do it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's even just like the resonance that you get when it's like said out loud. And I don't often think about it when I am chanting or I'm hearing chanting, but yeah, there is this kind of connection to the very foundation of how teachings were communicated that you kind of enliven or bring to the fore a little bit, that you can't just get from reading a book or something like that. I was just kind of wanted to get into your love of language. Like when did that develop? Was that like as a result of your uh, avid readership growing up, or was that something that you unlocked learning a new language? I was just curious when that started for you.
It's probably pretty early. I mean, my father was an English professor. My mom taught writing, so it's kind of just like if someone was like grew up living in the forest and they were like they don't even remember when they started to learn to hunt ducks. You know what I mean? It's the water I swam in. But, my parents, and in particular my father, just they loved language and literature. They were playing with it all day long and sharing it with people. So it's if I ever have any confusion about whether there's a distinct identity, which is me, which is separate from other things, it's very easy to see through if I just think about how I am has come through just my parents alone, if not more people. So
Wow, wow. And did you find yourself, because you grew up in a kind of a multicultural household, did you find yourself gravitating towards books that were exploring philosophical things more than, say, history or fiction or anything like that?
I was mostly reading fiction for a very long time. In my household with my spouse, we often joke that like nonfiction, like, why would you want to read about something that was real? But I read a little nonfiction now. But the tradition of fiction is something I love. I love the arts in general, music, songs. Yeah, I just love the arts, and I think the books I write would be categorized as nonfiction, probably. But I do feel like I'm trying to transmit something about the way fictional literature opens us to other people's worlds.
Yeah. There's something very masterful about how someone writing a novel can think of just about every single angle to shine, like you're like lighting a set or something. You just get every single like to get the depth, and you get this. And how did you know about how that world was? And you're reading like a fully fleshed out 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional thing, and it's just like just with turning pages, it's just amazing. I feel that, and it's amazing when a story that is technically made up can have such an impact. And you are very much engaged with the creative world, and I know that you're a musician, and then you're also a songwriter. How did you get into your expressions with your creativity in tandem with the Buddhist practice? Did they come before or a little bit after a lot of your work with Buddhism?
Yeah, I mean, basically, my work. Uh, I started my Buddhist practice while I was working professionally as a musician, like as a singer-songwriter predominantly and a multi-instrumentalist. But at some point, it was just my creative energy. I just wanted to go towards liberation through Buddhist means. And so I don't work as a musician at all anymore, except I have a few guitar students, and that's been for many years. I mean, really, when I was ordained, and it was, I thought about it. It was a little bit of a hard shift because I had built my whole identity for myself on being a musician. That was pretty important to me. I had a lot of ego attachment, um, but the commonality is, I I made music because I wanted to give my effort towards making something that sort of elevates the human experience. And with Buddhism, it's similar, but it's a little bit more channeled, which is like not just elevating the human experience, but really looking at as the thing I keep saying, collective liberation or liberation for all beings, which is a vow that I find really inspiring.
Yeah. And what you're saying is reflective of parts of my life too. Like I pursued something very intensely creatively for a while, except my through line was a little bit different. Yours was to kind of elevate the human experience. Mine was like I did performing arts, and mine was uh, to be the funny guy, or to be on a talk show couch, kind of hanging out. So I'm glad that yours was a little bit more of a rooted in something healthy for the rest of the world. Uh,
Well, I should be honest, there was huge amounts of ego attachment within the process. And there still is. But, I'm just a human being, just trying to, work through all the tendencies of my consciousness, which include all the needs to be seen and loved um, that are just a part of being me, certainly a human. Yeah, that's been there all along.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and it's also something that gives you a lot of insight too, because you're willing to kind of look at that and use it as a it seems like as a practice element too, which is pretty that awareness is it's hard to have that awareness, but also you're not shying away from using it as a tool, which is really really amazing. And yet you still use your creativity and songwriting and song performance skills within a Buddhist context, because I saw you perform for the Soto Zen Buddhist Association conference. I don't know what year it was, but you performed Shubidu. Uh, it was great. I was very happy to watch it. It was a really, really great performance. And you also played with accompaniment, with upright bass accompaniment, who's also part of the Zen community. It was really cool to watch that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that was Doan Wrestler, who I haven't seen for a while, who's a Soto Zen priest, ordained by Shohaku Okamura, and an amazing bass player. Like, uh, a person who can do all the things with the bass you're supposed to be able to do, but then also can do things with the bass where you go, I don't even know how that's happening. And I mean, I used to play upright bass myself, and I'm just like, he is on a utterly different plane. But anyway, uh, yeah, I mean, if I'm at we have little talent shows at conferences for teachers, and I'll play a song. Like I'm gonna play some songs for a fundraiser. But I mean, I might get out and perform in front of people 2 times a year for 15 minutes. Whereas, I used to, play 100 shows a year or whatever. It's pretty different.
Yeah. Wow.
Pretty
Wow.
different.
What is it like to play music for a Zen audience or like a Buddhist audience, a little more specifically? Has that does that have its rewards in ways that a more general audience doesn't, or is it just kind of a different flavor?
It's completely different. I used to, I can't even the different to get up in front of I mean, everyone loves you. They're just there to have fun. It couldn't be a more friendly audience. There are people who are incredibly good at focusing their attention. I played many shows when I was working professionally where there, people, it would be like a concert setting and people would listen. But I played many, many club shows where no one is paying any attention. You're just like, I'm glad I'm making $50 tonight. So I don't really miss that. I mean, it was fun, but I don't miss it.
Yeah,
Uh,
gotcha, gotcha.
so
And-
anyway, Zen audiences are great. I
yeah,
mean, it's wonderful being around Zen practitioners. I feel so grateful. We're just people, so I encounter people doing harmful things or unskillful things, and I do them myself. But overall, I'm just enormously grateful at the amount of time I get to spend with people who are really they have a clear interest in living in a way that helps people, and some humility involved in that, and that's just awesome.
and do you feel that when you go to a conference, because I was curious like what going to a conference is like, because you're in a space with like-minded people that are teachers or in a higher level administration um, capacity. And I was just curious, like what is that conference experience like? Is it kind of well, I got to show up and do this kind of more admin approach, or does it really feel like you're delving into a community and building community when you're going to those?
Yeah, so the Buddhist conferences I've been to a Gen X Dharma Teachers Conference, which is a collection of Generation X people born between 64 and 80 or whatever, who are Dharma teachers, and a Soto Zen Buddhist Association conference says a few, uh, and maybe something else. But so they've all been conferences of teachers. And for me, they've always been really inspiring. I mean, just meeting people who, I have a lot to learn from. I often get to meet people who I've read a bunch of their books and just have been really inspired and or have know things that they're doing. There was someone at a conference recently who's like doing these ceremonies that they will do like in the just on the street in areas where there are high levels of homelessness. So they do a Zen ceremony called the Hungry Ghost ceremony, where then you give out a bunch of food during the ceremony. And, just like, wow, I get to hang out and talk to the person who's doing this really amazing thing. So, yeah, it's inspiring. And, sometimes it's like, oh, now there's the business meeting. And this is, a little less exciting because we have to like decide how we're going to, are we going to incorporate our organization or whatever? Well, that's, I've become quite accustomed to that as part of the path. I think 15 years ago, I was like, I'm not doing that, which made sense. I was just trying to learn to be stable, to have some understanding of the Dharma, to meditate. But, at this point for me on the path, it's like, yeah, we do need to get together and just kind of plan how to do things. And what's really fun for me is through the practice, I've come to often be able to be like, yeah, we're sitting around planning this boring thing and it's great because we're together and we're doing something that's important. And that feels good. Having said that, I still do get, kind of like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, like when you have to put the name tag on, you're kind of filling out forms and various things like that. That can there's a little less. It's harder to see the amazement in moments like that. But I get it. Like yeah, you're if you kind of see it from more of a bird's eye, you can kind of see well this is the necessary motion for the next thing to happen that will help more beings find
Yeah.
liberation or whatever it is. And how have things been in your more I guess close sangha or your local sangha? Like how I think that I saw on the Minnesota Zen Center's website that there's some fundraising goals for some remodeling or some things like that are happening. How are things in your sangha?
Oh, yeah, I feel like the Sangha is thriving. I hope so. I've been with the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center for about 22 years. And there have been difficult times where there were just maybe someone had done something harmful, and so there was a lot of reconciliation to be done, or there was disagreement about sort of how to organize an important part of the leadership structure or something, and that could be really challenging. um, but predominantly the experience has been felt really supportive and wonderful, and it's feeling good right now to me. I hope it is to other people. I'm the assistant guiding teacher, so I'm in a position where I can get feedback. But sometimes when you have a position of authority, people they don't want to give you feedback. It's like scary or something. It's hard for me to understand that I can be scary, but I think that's probably true. This power is there. So, but yeah, the community is growing and thriving. We've been growing consistently for like 15 years. And, we're raising some money for some very minor remodeling, but we just had a major expansion of our building, and the gardens are just really beautiful right now. We have wonderful people doing a lot of gardening. Yeah, so, people are engaged in a wide variety of different Dharma type activities, and we're starting to reach out a little bit more than in the past into the wider community. So,
Yeah. I saw you were interviewed for Fox 9 or something like that a little bit ago because there was a mindfulness, I guess, awareness day that they were doing, and they ended up going to the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center and talking to you. And I thought it was amazing. It was really cool. It was really cool to see it featured, and the space looks amazing. Like the space looks so great. But what I thought was really uh, a testament to uh, the depth of experience that you can have there is that you and the anchor or the reporter were have the offsite reporter were talking in the Dharma hall while people were doing zazen, and the people were just kind of sitting there very peacefully, very like very focused. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. You're having a full out conversation right in front of maybe it's like 16 people meditating. Anyway, I just thought that was very impressive. And I was curious, like, did that has have moments like that kind of brought more people in the door that have walked by it a million times and what has your mindfulness outreach been like in general? Because I know that you also do it in secular environments where you do police training, addiction recovery groups. So I was just curious, like, what your relationship with Minnesota mindfulness has been.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of hard to say. We don't make really any effort to track what brought you here, like a little form or something. So I talk to people. Yeah, and I've never heard anyone be like, yeah, I saw the news thing, because we usually get on the news once a year because we have this event on the Friday after Thanksgiving we call Blank Friday. And it's a all day of meditation and intro classes in an open house. And it's the various news agencies think it's kind of catchy, instead of Black Friday, it's Blank Friday. So we've been getting on the local news for years doing that. I don't know if anyone, that's like the one thing. I think, like, for me, I knew about Minnesota Zen Meditation Center for years. I'd driven past it. I'd heard people who've gone there, and at some point, I felt the need. So I think for most people, there's kind of a web of things of hearing about it in various ways. Um, when it comes to mindfulness training, um, that is largely just evolved from people in the community, at least for me, just kind of reaching out and be like, hey, this group of people I'm representing is interested in having some meditation instruction. So I haven't really made almost any effort to sort of be a mindfulness teacher. I just there, people know, we have meditation in the name. It's Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. And I do work on developing relationships. And so, yeah, mostly that's just emerged from kind of our web of relationships. And it's wonderful to be able to just practice the sort of the basics of meditation and confer the most basic ideas of the tradition in a secular manner to people who might otherwise have no exposure is it's really wonderful. And being around people who are first tasting meditation is it's so inspiring. I mean, you can forget like the first few times where you're like, oh my gosh, my mind just won't stop, to actually realize that your mind is constantly chattering. Or like, oh, it stopped for like 15 seconds and I have never felt this calm. Just to hear that from people for whom it is really fresh is, it's inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of courage for people that are not familiar with meditating to sit and even just for like 3 minutes or something like that, or even just for like a matter of less than a minute, it could be really really intimidating, and then they'll just kind of throw it away and say not for me. And I think I can't speak for everybody, but I think that there is something about having a mindfulness practice, a meditation practice that can be extremely helpful. But yeah, I mean there is something about that little glimmer that you get where it's like, okay, like at the very least, I'm aware about how much chatter I have, and I'm not, and that's not just me, it's just what happens. I think so. I was looking up, someone else was talking about describing what the mind is, and it's like thoughts are like secretions of your mind, and I thought it was like that's a really wonderful way of putting it. Um, I think Roberts of Ocean Gate Zen Center mentioned that, Reverend Roberts. And so, anyway, I just thought that it's a really wonderful thing that you do, where you can kind of apply it within your sangha, and then when you're called, that you can bring that out to the people that otherwise don't have that experience. And I was curious too, like what. So you were driving by Minnesota Zen Center a lot, and then you found yourself going in. What made you kind of commit to really being not just a member of the sangha, but kind of going into a more committed, in-depth, even leadership role within that community?
Yeah, for me, it was a pretty steady, gradual process. I was meditating there once a week. was like, well, this is really helpful. Maybe I'll go attend a talk. And I attended the talk. I was like, well, that seemed really helpful. I was like, okay, well, now maybe I'll start meeting with the teacher. I was like, well, that helps. I was like, the next thing you know, they're like, oh, could you set out the snacks after? No, well, that seems helpful. So, and yeah, so it was a fairly gradual process. Started doing retreats, and I was like, well, I'm doing a lot of retreats. I'm starting. You're asking me to teach some intro to Zen. I really find that to be really rewarding. Maybe I could teach some more. So and asked my teacher to ordain me, and we went through a process and I did that. So yeah, it was just a very steady evolution of being like, I am doing this and kind of leaning into it and deepening that seems like the right path. So there weren't a lot of points. There really weren't points that felt like I was taking some kind of plunge. That just hasn't been my approach or experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really wonderful thing that you have just your like from what I've been from our conversation is that there is this through line of yes, like you have a mission or a goal or an interest in saving all beings, and you implement that into various capacities that you have. But you have this way of falling into something isn't quite the right phrasing, but you just kind of like go with the flow. You kind of like go with, well, I feel like writing a book. I feel like writing about this. I feel like, maybe someone else wants to see it. You have this through line that is really wonderful where you just kind of find yourself in these areas of interest or of benefit to yourself and to others. And so I'm really, really glad that you are able to act on those opportunities when they come.
Yeah, I really am too. I mean, one that I have the inclinations to do so, but I have so much support to do so, like within my family and just culturally. There's I live in this country where it's pretty good education, pretty good healthcare system. Yeah. Well, anyway, I could go on and on. So I understand that it is enormous web of phenomena that makes it so that in some moment I can get a call to do something and say yes, and also say no, which is also something that I do. I know how to do that too. Yeah, but yeah, I'm constantly inspired. I'm really excited because tomorrow we're launching a series that's 6 weeks long with a friend of mine named Gia Star Brown, who's a Christian pastor. And we're going to be bringing this, we're calling it Mindfulness with a Social Justice Lens to George Floyd Square, which is kind of a community space near where I live. And obviously, it's a space of, it's the site of George Floyd's murder. So it's a place of profound trauma and violence and racism, but also very much a place of healing and community and hope and possibility. So we're going to be just bringing folks, whoever shows up from probably a pretty wide spectrum of people, just into that space to just practice some simple meditation together and then just hear each other, just listen to each other, talk about where we're at. So that's just something that kind of emerged from a lot of relationships and so many beautiful possibilities. And I'm just really grateful.
Yeah, wow, what a powerful thing to do, and I'm so glad that there's an interfaith element to it, and that there's also just space for people to share their feelings or their experiences while being there, and it's in such a immensely powerful place. So, what a wonderful thing. And actually, that ties into my last question for you here. I was wondering if there are outside of this event that you have coming up this weekend, right? Is that right? This weekend?
Start
If
Tuesday, two
Tuesday,
Tuesdays.
is there something that you'd want to promote, whether it's like a cause, a foundation, something that you're interested in, or just sharing, I don't know, like a book you've read, a book you've written, a book you're publishing soon. If there's anything that you'd want to get more ears and eyes on, or it could also just even be some advice that you'd want to share with somebody at any point on the Buddhist path.
Yeah, well, what can I say? I love it when people read books that I've written. So I write them because I hope that they will help people, and they don't really help people if no one's reading them. So, I've written books on a variety of subjects that have really kind of a variety of audiences. So, if you've enjoyed this conversation, you could just look up my name and see if there's something that calls you. But I'm more interested in this moment. I don't have like I'm doing this program or whatever. And just, I'm here because I know what it is to suffer. I've suffered in my own personal ways, and I have talked to a lot of people and heard from them through other means about different ways they suffer. So it's very real to me that human beings, sentient beings, and I could see animals do too, suffer. And I've also seen enormous amounts of healing happen. And so I just hope people, when they encounter Buddhist teachers, I happen to be one, um, are coming away feeling like I can practice. There is possibility for me to be a part of something where everyone is a little more free from suffering. And the way that you would do that for everyone is distinct. I think Wendy Agyoku Nagao said, life is not a generality. It's very particular. It's today and it's you, how you are. So I just hope anyone who's still listening all the way through this conversation will be like, what is my path? What's my possibility? What's my offering today?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Wow. I mean, that is, I feel very encouraged and kind of charged up by, that kind of that sort of statement where, what can I offer today and what can I bring to this moment to to recognize healing and recognize suffering and the specialness and the uniqueness of where I am right now in this reality. So Ben, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really do appreciate it. I am so excited for all of your upcoming projects and your upcoming your work, your text work, and yeah, I hope to keep in touch with you soon and have you on again, and wish you the very best.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's been really wonderful.